Hello everyone, welcome back to the In-Out crowd. Even though we're still staying in, we are very much still out. Although hopefully it shan't be this way for terribly too much longer, as we are starting to see signs of the global situation we find ourselves in slowly improving. One of those signs being that our very own artistic director, Thomas Small, received the first of his COVID vaccinations just the other day. Big round of applause for Thomas being so brave to venture outside of his house for, I think, probably the third or fourth time in the whole year, and he's not the only one. And don't worry, I'll hold all wee prick jokes. We've heard them all. The prick, of course, referring to the COVID jag itself, so the rest of you get your mind out the gutter, thank you. Now you're going to have to excuse me, I have opened up my window because it's absolutely roasting in here. Must be because of all of the hot topics that we're going to be discussing tonight from Eleanor, as well as some other things that we're going to chat about. So if you hear any of the fabulous sounds of Fife, such as birdsong or the chippy next door or a crane that's been here since 6 months before we moved in that's inexplicably not getting on with any sort of construction work at all, just ignore it. They hopefully shouldn't be going too much longer. Now, to kick off tonight, we are still, of course, bringing up our campaign called #TalkItOut. And what we're chatting about with Talk It Out is to try and encourage our fabulous community to be more open about discussions surrounding mental health and any discussions that might affect our mental health. Now, mental health? Is that plural? It is new. Right, so there's lots of things that can affect our mental health. Staying in for a year and a half could be one of them. Worrying about things to do with work, finance, and all these other things. They are all things that can affect everyone's mental health, but specifically for LGBTQ plus people, whilst we find ourselves being pushed further into the mainstream, we're pushing ourselves further into the mainstream, but that also means that we might be receiving more backlash, that we perhaps feel that some people perhaps feel like might not be such a big issue anymore, but of course we know that it is. Now, this can range from people being misgendered, even live on television or live on radio. This can lead to people making assumptions about other people's sexualities, using homophobic or transphobic slurs, other sorts of outdated language. Really, the list just continues. We want to make sure that here at the In-Out crowd, we are having a wee laugh and flinging some good old jokes your way, whether they involve wee pricks or not, but that we're also talking about subjects that might have affected our community quite heavily over the past week, 2 weeks, month, or even longer. One such subject that we're going to be chatting about tonight is a celebrity who is rather famous and has always regarded herself as a strong ally of the LGBTQ plus community, who has fell into some hot water recently, not figuratively, of course, not literally, to do with some transphobic language that she had said during a podcast. Now, this is something that can affect trans people, non-binary people, and anyone who loves, cares for, is friends with, or family members of a non-binary or trans person as well. So it's not just us that are, feeling upset by things like that, but also our real allies and our friends and family too. So to chat about this, I am going to ask my fabulous team, In-Out crowd team, to come up on screen and let's #TalkItOut. So I have got my fabulous In-Out crowd team, and Tommy, you'll be pleased to know there's another bear joining us this evening. I'm sure it's been a while since you've seen a bear in the flesh, so I thought I would bring it to you just as I'm afraid he's only here for me.
Woo! Is that what a bear does? That's a wolf probably, but let's just pretend so. That's a bear.
Yes, and due to COVID restrictions, he won't be shared, I'm afraid, so apologies. So we've started off on a nice light note. We have got a little something to #TalkItOut about this evening. So I had a whole other topic that we were going to originally talk about, but there has been recent developments this very morning. So I wanted to bring it to y'alls. Jess Glenn is a singer who has been done very well for herself and has been kind of quite widely acclaimed and has been quite a bit of a kind of superstar almost in the last couple of years. But recently she appeared on a podcast with a comedian and had made some transphobic slurs, including using some outdated, very, very outdated terms, which is definitely regarded as kind of discriminatory, prejudiced language towards trans people, and had also described trans people that she was, I think, out with in a club or something as, this is her words, men in wigs. So understandably, there was many trans people just in the community, as well as some trans celebrities and kind of activists that said this really isn't okay. And, you know, you've got to do better. Like, we don't use these terms anymore. So she did issue an apology. And the apology was on Instagram, and she had said that she was so sorry and she was heartbroken that she has kind of offended people. And she says that as someone who has been part of the LGBTQ plus community, I think as an ally, you know, she is heartbroken that she hasn't realised that this language isn't okay to use. And I think that that's something that I just kind of wanted to touch upon. And this is by no means an attack on Jess Glenn. By no means is it an attack on anyone who uses that language or anything. I think it's just more about kind of not so much educating, but just bringing awareness to these sorts of words, and how if you're going to claim to be an ally, you've got to really make sure that you are constantly, I personally think you've got to make sure that you're keeping up to date with what are the terms that aren't okay anymore, because there's lots of things that may have been said 40 years ago that you just don't say anymore, and vice versa. You know, the word queer was an absolute no-go, and then now it's been reclaimed, but not for people who aren't queer. So it's a bit of a tricky subject, but it is, again, something that, you know, lots of celebrities have been sort of putting their foot in it with transphobic rhetoric recently, and it's something that is a bit of an uncomfortable subject, but what else is the In Out crowd here for but to bring these uncomfortable subjects to a spotlight and just acknowledge them and address them. So Eleanor, I'll come to you. Do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share?
Well, I the bit that I'm mainly picking up from you that I'd like to pick up on is that how you said about this isn't an attack, and it's actually an opportunity for someone to be able to step back and apologise, as she did, or and educate themselves. But I've been kind of reading up quite a bit about like cancel culture and so on, and I'm sure you will have heard that term being thrown around before, and I think I'm really not a fan of it. Of course, there's the odd exception when people do not apologise and do not try and change their ways, but I don't think someone deserves to be cancelled for this. I think it's about how they move forward with it. Making mistakes are okay. You just have to accept that they are mistakes and move on.
Absolutely. I think as well, not that Jess Glenn's done this, but I think sometimes when people are sort of pulled up and said, hey, you know, you can't really say that, that's not really appropriate, sometimes people jump on, oh, this is cancel culture, you know, and so I think it also goes the other way as well, in that, you know, if someone says, listen, I don't think that's appropriate, I don't think that's very nice, I don't think that's needed, there is sometimes a jump to, oh, it's cancel culture, but in actual fact, as you said, Eleanor, it's an opportunity, and it's brought up out of kind of respect for the other person. I kind of think that the apology is the first step. You know, that's not the cure for what's happened. You've got to make the apology, and then it's what you do after, which proves if it's enough or not enough. So I'm kind of with you there, Eleanor, as well. It's an opportunity for everyone to learn, and even for those of us that don't use those terms to describe people, it's an important reminder of actually that it can be incredibly hurtful, and that we've all got to just be mindful of that. Thomas, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think it's in language, as we've talked about before on previous shows, that language is really important. It feels like some people just feel like they can say anything, and as long as they say sorry, it's fine.
Exactly.
And we're meant to just move on and it's all okay. But I think there's something about, yes, I don't believe in cancel culture, but I do believe in accountability. So I think it's about making sure that, yes, she said sorry. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do now? How are you going to use your platform to actually, you know, I mean, I don't massively agree with kind of like, you know, every like DIY influencer that you follow on has suddenly got an opinion on kind of, you know, every kind of, you know, issue and rights kind of thing around the world. I don't think we need to at that level, but I think when we're talking about celebrities who are in their millions of followers, and actually what they say, we do really hang on what they say. So I think it's about understanding the importance of voice and platform, and who are those people that should be using the platform for good, as well as, you know, what they do. So I think it's something about what I'd really love to see now is how is she supporting the trans and non-binary community to, yeah, whether that's through, is she going to make a wee donation, or, you know, I mean, I don't want to make an assumption about her financial status. So if that's not appropriate for her, if that's not something she can afford to do, there's other ways of doing that, about volunteering your time. There's other ways of doing that, you know, we all do regardless of our income. We, you know, we try to contribute where we can, about looking at you know, a society that we want to see in the future. So I know that if I had made a mistake like that, I would have been looking around going, right, to be accountable, what can I do to actually donate my time and my energy around this, to actually show that I really mean that I was sorry and that I made a mistake? Because yeah, we're all human, we all make mistakes, and you know, and sometimes there's a fine line with humor, with what's funny and what's not. So I think there's something about, you know, not stage managing what we're saying, but actually really questioning our beliefs and what we're actually putting out there in the world, and thinking about how important our voice is. So that's what I would like to see. I look forward, Jess Glenn, to how you're going to, you know, I'm saying this as if she's listening to this show. I mean, it would be, you know, I mean, if you are, then brilliant. But I'm assuming you're not. But I would really love to see that she's going to actually do something now about this, and anybody else who makes mistakes like this, that you do something about it, you know?
It makes me think of my mum. I can like hear my mum going, actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely. There was there's two drag race queens, Courtney Act and Willem. Willem was in series 4, and Willem on their, I think it was like a YouTube thing or something, had used the same language that Jess Glenn had used, and of course people said, you know, that I had the same sort of backlash from that. So what Willem then did was brought on Courtney Act, who is, I believe, genderqueer, non-binary, uses kind of all pronouns, and brought Courtney Act onto their YouTube channel and was like, okay, this is what I'd said and why is that wrong? And so because they're friends and it was in front of everyone, I thought something like that was quite interesting, because it often doesn't come from a hatred or a kind of outright, you know, I'm trying to upset people. It's just kind of ignorance, and just, you know, ignorance is bliss, as they say. And I think that is, as you're saying, Tommy, I think that's understandable. We can't all know everything, but I think when you're saying that you're an ally, it's important that you just have a Google. You know, follow some of the, you know, there's lots of accounts on Instagram and Twitter that, you know, kind of talk about these things all day, every day, and do, you know, little lives of stuff, do, you know, links to lots of different, you know, little 2-minute videos and all that. And I think that it's you know, it's social media has got its drawbacks, of course, but I think it's also the age of, you can get that information at your fingertips, and it's not the same as it was, you know, even 15 years ago, where actually to find out kind of what was outdated language, you would have needed to go into a library and, you know, get out the old dusty book and look at the Dewey Decimal System or whatever it is. You know, now you can Google it. It's not overly difficult. Well, I think that was a really interesting little snippet there for us to #talk it out. And if anyone has been affected by the things that we were bringing up, as usual, we will be linking any organisations that can give any help, support or advice in the comments below. It's raining men! Hallelujah! It's raining men! First up tonight, there are some stormy skies over Hertfordshire, as a Roman Catholic school's sex and relationships programme, which teaches that LGBTQ+ people cannot marry or have sex, has been criticised as wholly damaging. A Fertile Heart is what the programme is called, and it's being taught at a Roman Catholic high school in Hertfordshire through the Archdiocese of Cardiff. The LGBTQ+ charity Stonewall said it was upsetting to see misinformation still being taught. The Archdiocese said lessons were based on the Catholic understanding of life, but the programme was later criticised earlier this week by Hertfordshire Council, who said it was at odds with encouraging children to respect other people's differences. As well as its stance on gay marriage, the programme also teaches that contraception is wrong, that men are created to initiate sexual relationships, while women are receiver-responders. So if there's any updates on that, we will be sure to bring them to you here at the In Out Crowd, but that's all we have on that for now. Moving on, we have got some glorious sunshine over London as the UK's first LGBTQ+ retirement community is set to open. It's what's being described as the UK's first retirement community celebrating LGBT+ people, and the 19 flats at Bank House in Vauxhall, central London, will be available on a shared ownership basis, with residents expected to move in by midsummer. There's been a quote saying that Londoners deserve to enjoy their later years surrounded by a supportive community by Sadiq Khan. There has been growing interest in retirement homes aimed specifically at LGBT+ communities, and a recent national survey found that as people grew older and were in care homes, some felt they could not be open about being LGBT+ and felt scared. Sadiq added, the existing residents are already a diverse bunch, requesting casino nights and a drag show. They're looking forward to new ones moving in. If only I was set for retirement age, and I would definitely be moving in there as well. We wish them all the best of luck, because that sounds just like a really good laugh. Finally tonight, there is a persistent rainbow over the Parliament as MPs are set to debate the petition to ban LGBT+ conversion therapy. There's been calls for this sort of conversion therapy to be made illegal in the UK for a number of years now, and it will be debated by MPs after thousands of people signed a petition on Parliament's website. I was one of those thousands, thank you very much. The government said that in July it wanted to ban attempts to suppress an individual's gender identity or sexual orientation, but campaigners say they are still waiting for action. They say people are being exposed to psychological and emotional abuse. The Prime Minister himself said that the practice is abhorrent. The term conversion therapy refers to any form of treatment or psychotherapy which aims to change a person's sexual orientation or to suppress a person's gender identity. It can range from electric shock treatment to religious teachings or talking therapies designed to change someone's sexuality, and it can be very, very extreme. The practice is already outlawed in Switzerland and parts of Australia, Canada and the US. The petition, which has attracted more than 250,000 signatures, says running conversion therapy treatments in the UK should be made a criminal offence. It says forcing people to attend these treatments or sending them abroad in order to try to convert them should be outlawed also. We absolutely hope that that does become the case and that it does become a criminal offence and is wholly banned in the UK, but as usual we will keep you up to date with that here at the In Out Crowd. When it comes to the persistence of rainbows and pride, that's something that our community knows all too well. For decades now, we have been constantly pushing the boundaries and pushing for not only tolerance but acceptance. And whilst things like conversion therapy are unfortunately still legal in this country, hopefully it won't be for too much longer. And often it's thanks to folks such as artists and activists and creative people that are really helping to push forward those discussions and help other people understand what our community is all about. One such person is no different. We were able to meet with the fabulous drag artist, DJ, musical talent, acting powerhouse that is Jorday Daylight. Unfortunately, they couldn't be with us tonight, but they were able to meet us a couple of weeks ago for a short interview discussing what it was like to be a drag artist, a sort of activist, a podcast host, and all of the other fantastic creative things that they do at this time. And we were going to take a deep dive into some of the issues surrounding our community. And that's what we're going to do now on tonight's Raisin Liaisons. So this is the part part of the In Out Crowd where we like to give a bit of a spotlight to a particular person, organisation, charity or activist that we feel deserves a bit of a rainbow spotlight, and no one else deserves a rainbow spotlight more than our extremely special guest, drag artist, DJ and all-round creative powerhouse, Jorday Daylight. It's so great to have you here, Jorday. I hope you're doing well tonight, whenever this is.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm all right. Do you know what? Like, I'm glammed up to go nowhere but my living room. That's the story of the pandemic for everyone pretty much these days. It's such honestly a privilege to have me. I'm really excited to be here. And it's lovely to hear people say things like Creative Powerhouse. You know, I never, when I was at high school, kind of envisioned this would be my career in 10 years' time. But very much like this pandemic, you know, things are unprecedented every bloody day these days. That, yeah, I'm excited to come and just talk about my work.
We're so excited to have you. First of all, who is Jorday Daylight? Where did your drag persona, name, character, if it is a character, where did that come from for you? Because I'm always so interested to hear the sparks of drag from different artists.
You know, it's so funny. I feel like my therapist said that to me in my first therapy session. You know, who is Jorday Daylight? Where did you come from? And I was like, oh God, how long have you got? And then 3.5 years later, I've just finished therapy. So let's try and summarize this. God, so I very much like drag queens like Ru Jazzle, CJ Banks, Alice Rabbit, kind of fell into drag alongside people like Amy Lamore, who I used to run a night with called Lipline. And I started out kind of my drag career at the Church of High Kicks and CC Blooms, where I would perform sort of half in drag, I guess. My makeup was a bit questionable. My outfits were a bit questionable. The routines were the only thing that kept me going because people actually knew the songs and enjoyed the performance. So I think I'd kind of started out in CC's. DJing was something I had done out of drag for a while at Planet when I was sort of younger, and Hive, you know, saying that you're a DJ at Hive can be a bit of a questionable thing, but nonetheless, I did enjoy everywhere I've DJed. So I DJed quite often out of drag, and then I sort of merged the two when I started my night at CC Blooms called Naughty, which is like a Naughty's R&B hip-hop night, and then it kind of transferred to places like Cabaret Voltaire, Sneaky Pete's, Bongo Club, where I would DJ and drag. I kind of like to consider myself the Jodie Harsh of Edinburgh now, that I'm trying to get on that level. Maybe not there yet, but I did buy decks during the pandemic and started actually learning how to proper beat mat and not use a computer anymore, which has been such a fun experience. And in terms of the name Jorday Daylight, I always find it so funny telling people this, because the way I describe my drag is sort of Angel Delight on an Aldi budget. Like, I'm very much sort of really cute and sweet, but quite cheap. And I sort of got my name. This is where it's so funny. My name at Jorday Daylight wasn't my first drag name. My first drag name was Dita Lolita, which, I mean, it was a great name, but no one could pronounce it. And the amount of times I would do a show and people would be like, oh, Dita, what's the last word of the name? And I'd be like, oh, do you know what? If it's not landing, I shouldn't be using it. So I once DJ'd at the street where I took over the street and did a 90s night on a Tuesday. And Trendy Wendy and me had gotten quite drunk together, on shift, professional as always. And she had kind of said to me, what do you want to be called as your DJ name? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I used to get nicknamed Jorday because I used to wear a Newcastle strip growing up. And then she was like, Jorday what though? And then I was like, oh, I don't know. And she went, what's your favourite song? And I went, oh, Groove is in the Heart by Delight. What an anthem, right? She was like, Jorday Daylight, I see it, famous. I went, aye, okay. So a week later, poster goes out with name. I kind of go, that's quite a catchy name, actually. Maybe a drag. Yeah, it was like, maybe a drag name. Changed it a little bit and made it Delight, like Angel Delight, but with 2 E's, because I'm an ex-raver. And I was like, right, I'll put together this name. And honestly, everyone loved it. Everyone was like, this is so cutesy, but sort of 90s cartoon vibes, like Delight the band. And that was kind of how it all started. Drag for me, as much as I've done it, and a lot of drag queens love RuPaul's Drag Race and Death Drops and stuff, they're all in their own game amazing. That isn't me. I'm no here to do Death Drops and splits. I'm here to sing a club song and maybe lip sync a Whitney ballad. That's always been my drag. But I was always heavily influenced by like Lee Bowery, a Club Kids of New York. So when I was at uni in my first degree doing drama and performance at QMU, I had done in my final year, I directed this show that was all about sort of Midsummer Night's Dream meets club kids of New York. And they were all fairies because they were all part of the queer community. And we did this sort of abandoned rave sort of performance. It was Shakespeare, so wild. I then was like, do you know what? Theatre is my kind of main thing here in drag. I then did my first ever show, Wasted Youth, which celebrated its 2-year anniversary yesterday, which was so exciting. So I did that, and that, trigger warning here, by the way, in case anyone watching affected by this, but sexual assault. That sort of first show was all about sexual assault and the impact of that in the queer community and how it impacted me and my identity. And I joke, obviously, about going to therapy, but I did go to therapy for that. But I like that I can make a joke about it now. And then I did an MA at Edinburgh College of Art, and that was in performance art, because I thought I want to do drag, but again, unconventional. You know, I think my main sort of work ethic has always been doing drag in unethical and different ways that would shock people. I like to keep an audience guessing. I'm now a drag singer, so that's primarily what I'm doing in terms of sort of drag race style of drag that I sing, like loads of different songs on YouTube. And yeah, I've been creating, luckily, content during the pandemic, but it's just been a head fuck in all honesty. But yeah, that's me. Sorry for pure giving a TED talk.
No, always the TED Talks. That's what we want, totally. I think that's, I mean, personally, like, I've, as I said before we started recording, I've been a quite a big Jorday Daylight fan for a while, and what I love about your drag is that you can't pinpoint it, and I think that's where your style, that's what kind of speaks to me. I love all drag and I love all queer art, but I think when it's like, I can't put that in a box, I don't know what genre that is, you don't know what's going to happen there, I think that's where it really sings, you know, that's where it really, oh, no pun intended because you're a singer, but that's where it really kind of really speaks to those of us that are a little bit misfitted, that are like, oh, I maybe don't fit in here, I don't fit in here. It's like, no, but that's kind of, that speaks to me, and I think that's what's really great.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is drag has never been a thing. I mean, well, for me anyway, like when I say that people like me and Alice and Rue and Amy Lamore had sort of fell into this, like we genuinely didn't do this with the intention of we're going to be drag queens and take over Edinburgh, Glasgow and try to, we didn't. We just wanted to do drag for fun and then started making money from it, and it just started happening. So it's lovely now that I've got drag children from the House of Liability, which is my house. Mm-hmm. I'm very lucky that I've got them coming and going, I want to do drag, but I want you to show me. And I'm like, wow. I mean, I feel like in the drag community, I always feel like the kind of, when you've got a name for yourselves, when people are contacting you, wanting to do drag and wanting you to be their mother, which I kind of was like, I'm only 26 in a few weeks. I'm not that old. But, you know, for me, you're so right that I've always wanted to keep people guessing, and I don't want to pinpoint myself because an Aquarius at heart, I am such a rebel that I want to try and do things differently. But the thing is with drag that I've always felt is that I've never understood when people are like, well, that's not drag to me, because I've always been like, well, drag is everyday life. You know, you can't tell someone, well, this is drag, but this isn't. I've always said this on my social media platforms that in my opinion, all drag is valid, regardless of gender and sexuality and sort of styles. Like everyone's drag is valid. And I think particularly now, you know, I've seen so many fans that have been following me for ages, like on Twitter, Facebook, ranting about Drag Race and how Drag Race is certain people are in it and they shouldn't be and they're not doing well, and just, you know what people are like, it's telly. But I thought to myself, there's a pandemic, be thankful you've got television right now, that people are actually, they're doing this for you. And that's why I just very much with the drag stuff, I've been like, to me, there's never been actually in the drag world, I've never been like, oh, I should expect this, because I've always been like, anything could be drag, it's all performance.
I think so. I think that's, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think, you know, even though it's funny that you say, oh, I'm only 26, I'm that old, but I think that, you know, given with your kind of personal life, what you kind of talked about, you've got a lot of life experience, and there's a lot of things that you advocate for and that you kind of are an activist for, that really speaks to people as well, because there is so much of your personal life that really you do exude a lot of strength from, and if you feel comfortable kind of discussing it, you do have a chronic health condition as well, which I think is so, and you know, it's brilliant to see how vocal artists such as yourselves are, is that there is no, body type for drag, there is no face for drag, there is no health condition that restricts you from doing drag. As you say, it's for everyone, and I think that is something that is a great message for younger artists wanting to get into drag, but are maybe thinking, oh, I don't know if it's for me. Do you feel comfortable talking about kind of how that it's transpired for you?
Of course, I'm very much open about everything about myself. That's the thing. Like, I'm unapologetic to myself because I feel like everyone should be. And for me, having a disability and sort of owning that took a lot. Like, I won't lie to you. Like, I used to use, and a lot of us in the drag community, when I say we are very guilty of this, I used to use drag as sort of a coping mechanism to pretend I didn't have cystic fibrosis, which is the disability that I have. And I would go, right, I can go on stage, I can lip sync this like Whitney track or Madonna track, and I can just pretend I'm them for like an hour and then come home, take it off and kind of deal with my everyday life. And that honestly like did work. Like for me at the time, I was guilty of it because I wanted to do that at the time. But I just found my forte with Wasted Youth was talking about my sexual assault in that show. And that show ended up getting filmed as part of a documentary I did called Jorday 65 Reasons to Live, which was on BBC iPlayer. But that was all about this drag queen are doing amazing things. However, they also have CF and are dealing with potentially a lung transplant in the future, sort of chronic illness, working as a youth theatre director during the day. Like there was so much going on in that. And I had said this infamous quote at the very end that, you know, I felt like there was a clock ticking behind me and it just kept ticking. So I had to keep doing things. And it's funny because everyone thought that was really inspiring. And I now would say it was inspiring to hear, but actually it was quite an unhealthy way of life that I had, because I would be in hospital every 5 weeks with a chest infection because cystic fibrosis results in like chest infections because mucus clogs up your lungs. I would end up in hospital for 5 weeks and then I'd be home after a week and I'd be on an antibiotic course, but I would go and DJ, but I would go and party, but I would go do drag shows, but I would go work during the day in my like youth theatre jobs. And that was totally valid because at that point I was kind of like, well, I have one life to live, I want to enjoy it. But now, since starting this new medication called Cafrio in the cystic fibrosis community, I'm like, okay, the clock's been reset, but let's not use it up completely. Do you know what I mean? And I've spoken for the Scottish Trade Union Centre about disability visibility in the arts. I've spoken to a lot of drag artists who also are disabled. So one has dyspraxia, who I'm quite close with. The other one has something to do with their colon. So they've got a colostomy bag. And it's so interesting sort of speaking to them about their experiences and getting sort of like, they've said to me, oh, you know, I considered it inspiring that you were doing work about being disabled in drag. And I was just like, well, I'm just doing my story. Like yours is yours. You do it however you want. Loads of drag queens talk mental health in drag. And I think that's inspiring. Loads of you do death drops. And I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could do that. You're amazing. You're an athlete. But no, I very much last year in 2020, it feels weird saying last year is 2020 because we're still basically living. It's like I do this podcast called Afternoon Delight, which I interview artists on. And I'd like say to one of the guests, Rob Madge, last week that, you know, this very much just feels like a second act to a musical, that it's shorter, but a lot of shit's still happening.
Oh, yeah.
And that is how it feels at the moment. So it's so interesting that it was January 2020 that I'd performed my show, The Honeymoon Period, which was my second show. But that was me, Fauna Love, and Sarah Forrester, two performers. And we did a lung transplant and cystic fibrosis drag show. Now, telling people that, I think a lot of people will be like, what do you mean a drag show about lung transplants? But I was lucky that I got funding from Young Scott to rehearse, devise this piece with them, and my friend Katie Jefferson, who sadly is no longer here. And we wrote sort of what it was like going through the assessment period of going to Newcastle, coming back, having to sort of, I had to break up with someone because we just weren't going to work. He wanted to move to London. I wanted to get a lung transplant, and sort of this family dynamic that me and my mother were going through quite a difficult time. So I kind of emulated that in the show by having the mother and daughter go through quite a hard time. That the mother was quite controlling, the daughter was wanting to live her life, but at the same point needed her mum. There was just so much going on. We did Mama by Spice Girls and everyone cried. It was great. And I got in summer, August, the Young Scott Arts Award for that, and sort of was, you know, told that show particularly had really encouraged other people as disability people in the community to sort of come forward and talk their stories. And I was also lucky that I was working with Imagine It and Birds of Paradise Theatre, and I still am, to write a show to take into high schools that's all about Section 28, the Stonewall riots, and it's sort of LGBT education for kids, but in a drag show forum. It's a bit more fun. We actually worked with LGBTQ of Scotland to write it with young members from the community, so it felt like it wasn't just me going, well, this is how I would have felt at 14 when I'm literally 26 this week. So I didn't want to kind of be like, well, this is what I feel, because I just remember in high school, foreign fear coming in and me sitting there and being like, oh, someone took drugs, they died. Yeah. And that's all, it's all so horrible. But I just remember there was such a stigma of they take ecstasy, they die, everyone cries, don't take drugs, we're away. And that was it. There was no any education to it. Whereas I was like, well, no, let's take in, now that the Scottish government have introduced the LGBT curriculum, which is fantastic, let's take in a foreign fear show written by those children and the young people to educate them on things like Section 20 and Stonewall, because without those moments and those people that were on the forefront, we probably wouldn't have a lot of things we have now. So yeah, I mean, I would consider myself an activist, I guess. I think we're recently, me and my two friends have started this thing called the Gratitude Initiative, which is I've called that my activism project. I mean, that is because that's a universal thing that my plan is to take it to loads of different theatre companies and work with artists to create work about the pandemic and what 2020 taught us and what 2021 we're grateful for, because a gratitude journal was something that when I had my about 7th meltdown in May during the pandemic, I got a gratitude journal and didn't realise how long-term that would really help my mental health. And I feel like everyone could benefit from that outlook on life. But yeah, that's very sweet you would consider me an activist. I don't know. I just do me, and if people take something from it, I'm thrilled for them, because that's what art's meant to do, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think that's what the kind of, for us personally as well here at Shaper Caper, that's the kind of activism for us that really makes the difference, you know, as you say, rather than just saying don't do this and do this. It's that's important for some people, but I think being able to showcase it in a creative way that gets people talking, that raises a conversation that's maybe difficult to talk about, you know, and I think as well what you're saying about Section 28, we've done a couple of podcasts and different discussions around Section 28, as well as looking at some of that for some of our dance work around No Offence, which is an LGBTQ plus show that we're putting together for young people as well. And it is just a lot of Section 28. It was the fear of, we can't talk about this because teachers will lose their jobs, because they'll get bullied, because of whatever. And I think it's just the creating that conversation and just putting it out there, and whatever discussions happen, that is some of the most difficult change to make, when you're actually asking people to talk about it rather than standing up there and dictating, you know.
You're so right, yeah.
With that as well, of course, you're, as you said, you're a DJ, quite obviously drag artist as well, and an artist in general, a creative, and all three of those things are very difficult things to be doing. An artist, tough job, a job in nightlife and entertainment, it's a tough job. If you have any words of advice for young people that are looking to get into drag or arts or just anything else creative as a job, how do you find the balance of having such a demanding work life, but also looking after yourself and making sure you're keeping your health as a priority as well? Because I think as creatives, we're all guilty of, yeah, no, it's fine, I'll sleep later, I'll rest tomorrow, I'll just have a pot noodle the new, you know? Like, have you found that balance? And do you have any advice for young people that would like to do what you do?
It's so funny, because that's a question that I, on my podcast, ask my guests, you know, could you give them words of wisdom to younger people listening who might need that encouragement? Because working in the arts right now, you know yourself, is just, it's such a minefield to navigate all this stuff, because we're nearly a year of this. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that to be like a Debbie Downer, but we're nearly a year of the pandemic. And I thought to myself, like in March, like, oh, I'm doing so well on this new medication, I wonder what I can do. And then I was in the 12 weeks of shielding. So course, yeah. One thing I am doing right now is writing a new show called 12 Weeks, which is about the pandemic and how it affected me. But that was very much like very difficult to kind of go through, because I live on my own. I've got 2 cats, but I mean, they're getting sick of me now. I live on my own, so it was really difficult. And I had a lot of other issues in the past that happened that I hadn't dealt with. And I was very much guilty of this. And this is my word of wisdom, actually. Is I was so guilty of taking on 100 things so that when I came home, I would just pass out and sleep. I didn't have to deal and think about it, because I'm quite an overthinker that if I'm left with myself too long, I get very stressed out. just because of anxiety-related issues and mental health issues. So for me, sitting and having to spend those 6 months, it was 6 months until I ended up going on antidepressants and finishing therapy online, which I'm so thankful I managed to do. I had to really spend 6 months kind of thinking, right, what am I doing with my life, and what do I want from this? And, you know, I can't keep living where I was because I've got a lot of baggage right now, clearly. And like, yeah, pursuing stuff in the arts right now, like, I would never like to say to people that were watching this, you know, oh, don't do what I did when I was 18, because I'm not here to do that, because you have to have your life and your own experiences. I am actually 26 this week, and although it very much feels cathartic for me, I am actually like, oh, I actually am an adult now. And I don't feel like I have to set an example for younger people, because they can do what they want and they can just hear my story and take what they need from it. But I kind of really need to get my shit together. And that was what I did the last 6 months. And one of my favorite not mantra, I guess, quotes that I live by at the moment has Maya Angelou said, you know, when you know better, you do better. And there would be no point in me sitting saying, oh, well, you know, your boyfriend's treating you like this at 18. Well, I think you should just bin him off because mine did that. Because one, that's my story, my experiences. I'm just projecting that onto you. Two, you need to go through this to come out the other end. I hate to say that, but it's so cliched, but it's true that you won't know everything if you don't experience life. And there's a book I've finished, actually. It's so funny because I am such a book nerd, but during the pandemic, was like, oh my God, I can read books, because I never used to have the time. And I fell in love with this book called Keeping the Love You Find by Harvey Hendricks that helped me really discover who I was. And that was a head fuck, in all honesty. And I kind of was like, all right, I'm managing to kind of manifest and love myself. But it had literally said to me during the book that, you know, you need to go through all this to realize who you are. And you can't, there's no point someone saying to you 18, this is what you should do and do it. There's no point. And I think the arts is such an interesting one for me right now, because I'm lucky I'm actually in this position now. But let me tell you, it took a 4-month period of hell to get here. But I am working with the National Theatre of Scotland, which is really exciting to develop work. And then I'm also working with the BBC again, but this time for the social. And I'm also working with On Five Cultural Trust. And these are things that, you know, I guess it is that good things come to those that wait. But a lot of artists I'm friends with, really close friends with, aren't going through that and are still struggling. One of my friends who's a dancer, he's fantastic. You'd probably know him, actually. And he had put on Facebook the other day, you know, he had 8 job rejections in one day. And he was going to go eat cake because he was so upset. And I was like, oh my God. Like, because I had went through the same in October, that I got 9 rejections in one day. Literally, I think the week of my friend's funeral. And I thought to myself, oh, I can't hack this now. So I actually had to take time to go, do you know what? Financially, I'm now fine. I'm not going to apply for anything else right now, because you apply for jobs, you might get a rejection. You have to know that mentality. Any young students in the arts, I've got a friend who's studying at UCLan. He's a fantastic actor. He's so talented. And he had been messaging me this week, oh, I don't want to do this. It's all digital now. And what am I doing? And I was like, just do it and you'll get there. And I hate that. It sounds so like, oh, you'll be fine. Everything will be fine. But I just feel like right now, as working in the arts now with the National Theatre and know what's going on right now, things, and I hate to say this, but I have to, things aren't returning back to normal for a bit longer than we probably would have anticipated, maybe 6 months. And that's not a reflection of them. That's just on what I'm hearing from different companies I work with, that it's so underestimated right now and unpredictable when things will return. The only thing I can say to people is, if you genuinely feel, this was what I had to do with my MA, because I was finishing my MA in March. If you feel like you can do digital, it's not what you want to do, but you actually can do it, then I would say stick with it. Just because it's not going to magically be next week that everywhere's open. And if you're talented enough and capable to actually ride the waves, then do it. Because for me, in May, when they contacted me, was like, oh, I'm a live performer. I can't do a film. Thought to myself, how am I going to do this? I can't do a movie. And I did watch a lot of YouTube videos on editing. I got editing software. I luckily had a camera, and I ended up finishing my MA, graduating with it, with an hour and 5 minutes movie. And I had a meeting with the National Theatre, and the director said to me, oh, your movie, The COVID Diaries, was amazing. And I was like, you watched that? And he was like, yeah. And he was like, who filmed it? And I was like, me. And he was like, did you do all of that on your own? I went, 2 friends helped me film outside. That was it. He went, wow. But I never in me would have been like, oh yeah, I can make a movie.
Sure, yeah.
I wouldn't. I would have been like, oh, I can't do anything like that. But I literally did it, and it's there on YouTube now. And from time to time, I go and watch a wee clip from it if I need to like feel a bit better, because it's a hard movie to watch, but it actually is a reflection of like determination.
Yeah.
And if younger people are watching this and they're thinking, oh, well, I don't know if I want to do this and maybe I need to take a break, that's valid as well. I've had friends that have deferred and they've now came back to finish their courses, but you have to trust your gut and go with what you feel.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think as well, our community and many other marginalised communities, we know rejection, we know being told you can't do things, we know what it takes to be resilient. So if we can go through the things that we need to go through on a global basis, then yeah, as you say, being able to make the decision to defer or do whatever you need to do, or alternatively push through things, the world's an oyster if we can do the kind of things that we all do on a daily basis. Thank you so much, Jorday. Honestly, like I could just sit here and like listen to you like all day, because it's just everything you say is just so brilliant. Is there anything in particular? You'd mentioned a few things about different projects that you're doing, but is there anything in particular that you'd like to promote, such as socials or projects you're doing, or anything where people can follow you and support you?
Yeah, well, if you're wanting to follow me and see me rant on Twitter about Tories, not being good, by the way, not positive context, you can follow me on Jorday_Daylight on Twitter. I'm Jorday Daylight Official on Instagram. All I post is photos of my cats on my stories, or occasionally a nice photo, like if I like how I look. And I guess in terms of plugging things, like I have got my podcast, which is Afternoon Delight, Delights with 2 E's. I'm always looking for artists to come and network and talk about their work. So if you watch this and you think, I'd love to come on and talk about my paintings or the work I'm doing with this dance company, hit me a DM. I'd love to have you on. The whole point of the podcast is you come and share your work and I get to know you. It's actually not a vanity project of, hi, I'm Jorday Daylight and I'm going to tell you why the world's the best. Like, no. And it's really helpful because a lot of people come on and they talk about ways they've managed to cope during the pandemic, which right now especially is a head fuck. Even for me, who's as someone that's actually like, doing well now, I had that 4-month period where I was going through bereavement and I thought, I don't even know how I'm going to get out of bed, let alone work. So it's an interesting time, definitely. And for projects like I am obviously doing, you'll see the BBC Social stuff coming soon, and you'll see the National Theatre stuff, no doubt, if you check their stuff out. We're just developing it still. But I am doing my digital drag show, the House of Liability live, and we're so lucky this happened, but a manager of a venue that I've worked with for years who are great have said to me that they watched the second digital drag show, thought it was phenomenal, and they've offered me Friday nights 9 till 12 when things open up. So I already have a new drag show that I can imagine is going to be very busy, so I'll have to probably be very careful COVID-19.
Yeah,
but that's happening, and we do that on Twitch. So if you find House Liability Drag Show, House is spelled HAUS, on Twitch, we do that once a month on the second Friday of the month. And it's just been such a pleasure having me. Thank you so much. I could do this all day and rant and ramble. I try not to. I'm quite bad for over talking these days because I just get so absorbed in what I say. But yeah, I'm just here to make art. That's it. Like, I feel like everyone I know at the moment is really struggling, and I just think, I've often said this, I once appeared in the CF Trust on a video talking about when I was really ill, and I think sometimes I watch that to remind me how well I'm doing physically now, which is amazing. And I remember saying, one day I sometimes would just get up, have a shower, wash my hair and make a cup of tea, and that was an achievement for me then fine. And that's what we need right now, is just those little moments that keep us going.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Jorday, so much for your time, and everyone make sure that you follow everything that Jorday's up to, because you will not be disappointed, I can tell you that. Thank you so much again to Jorday for giving us their time and for bringing up some really important conversations that as a community I don't think we talk about enough. And of course, as we've already mentioned tonight, it's always important to hashtag talk it out. And we do encourage everyone to go ahead and follow Jorday on their Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everything that they had mentioned. And of course, have a wee listen to their podcast, Afternoon Delight, which yours truly from Shaper Caper actually appeared on last week, talking all things creative and non-binary. history. Once again, Jorday, thank you so much. Mwah! We love you. Now, as well as all of those fantastic conversations that me and Jorday were just having there, don't mind if I say so myself, that's not the only important conversation that we're going to talk about tonight. We have got one more little snippet of a section left for you, and it's a topic which is rather hot, being brought to you by the fabulous Eleanor Walker. So Eleanor, go ahead and tell us what is tonight's hot topic.
Thanks, Alex. So today's hot topic may be a little random, but I thought it was time to switch things up a bit and tell you a wee story that has a good dollop of mystery involved. We love a bit of intrigue here at the In Out Crowd, so gather round, children. Our story begins off the coast of Australia, east of the gorgeous Great Barrier Reef. The Coral Sea Islands Territory, which is made up of 20 small and mostly uninhabited tropical islands and reefs, spans almost 800,000 square kilometres of mostly ocean. Wondering what on earth this has to do with LGBTQ plus history? Well, wonder no more. On the highest point of the territory, on Cato Island, a campsite called Heaven was claimed the capital of the gay and lesbian kingdom of the Coral Sea Islands. Yes, you did hear me correctly. Okay, let me back it up a little bit and explain. Matthew Briggs, who people know actually very little about, decided during the Brisbane Gay and Lesbian Pride Festival in 2003 that a gay kingdom should be founded. Gay activists, including Matthew Briggs, didn't agree with the Australian government's plan in 2003 to amend the marriage laws to prevent homosexual couples who were married overseas having their relationship recognised in Australia. The activists rightly saw this as a breach of their equal rights and so decided that they wanted to do something to protest. And with that, and using the reference to international law, which states oppressed people of overseas territories have a right to self-govern, the activists established an independent gay state, claiming the Coral Sea Islands as their territory. On June 14th, 2004, the activists sailed a ship named the Gayflower to the Coral Sea Islands and raised the rainbow pride flag on Cato Island to claim their new independent gay and lesbian state. The activists founded their capital on the campsite of Heaven, named after the famous gay nightclub in London, and proclaimed "I am what I am" as the kingdom's national anthem. Any person who identified as gay or lesbian at the time were immediately eligible for citizenship, and they published their only economic activities as tourism, fishing, and postage stamp sales. They also sanctioned swimming, lagoon snorkeling, bird watching, and shipwreck exploring as non-economic activities. Sounds like a slice of paradise to me. Also, a little sidebar, they also declared war on Australia on the 13th of September 2004, despite not being recognised as an independent state by Australia, any other country, or the UN. There was also one other backfire that came from the gay and lesbian kingdom of the Coral Sea Islands, as their official flag was the rainbow pride flag, and they had declared war on Australia. The Australian Government Department of Finance refused to display the flag on the grounds of representing a hostile nation. But now we come to the end of our tale. The official website of the Gay and Lesbian Kingdom of the Coral Sea Islands added a link to the Equality Campaign, which in the end helped secure the yes vote for the same-sex marriage in Australia. As a result, the nation and kingdom finally officially dissolved on the 17th of November 2017. Despite the nation never being recognised by other countries, I think it's a testament of people showing up for their beliefs and doing something. More and more, I've been hearing that if you want to get involved in activism to any degree, you've just got to get up and get started. It may not be perfect, but hey, it's something. Back to you, Alex.
Eleanor, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I feel like I've heard of the Coral Sea Islands, like that's in the subconscious somewhere.
In the ether somewhere.
But I never knew that. I mean, that really makes you feel like, oh my goodness, all I've done is just sit and watch Netflix and drink from a little beer mug for the last 6 months. Like, why have we not been sailing and claiming one of the Western Hebrides as you know what I mean?
Could you imagine? Whoa.
And maybe not quite as much snorkeling, maybe just kind of like shopping trolley and a bun, exploring.
Yeah, it blew my mind when I heard about it. You hear me talking about podcasts all the time. That's where I like to get my info from. And it blew my mind when I heard it, because I was like, there was an actual kingdom? A kingdom? It was really cool.
And I mean, that is the most, it's not just like the nation of the Coral Sea. No, it was the gay and lesbian kingdom. Like, that is the pageantry that we all would wish for. What do you think the national animal would have been if they had been considered a nation? I would say unicorn, but we're unicorn, aren't we? Scotland's unicorn.
I was just about to say, if we were going to do one on the Western Hebrides, we'd be set with the unicorn. I mean, I am a personal big fan of the flamingo. I think flamingos are fabulous. So let's go with flamingo. I mean, as if I speak for them, but yeah.
I think so. And in the world of pigeons, be a flamingo. You know what I mean? And I think that they would agree with that. Oh, thank you so much, Eleanor. And thank you to everybody watching tonight. We really hope that you enjoyed hearing about our hot topics, because even though Eleanor's was the hot topic of the night, we were definitely finding out some other slightly warmer topics, maybe not quite as hot as that, but definitely some other interesting factoids about our community and about our history. As usual, if you've been affected by anything tonight, we will link a couple of organisations that you can go to for any help and support, including LGBT Youth Scotland, the Equality Network, Pink Saltire. There's lots, and we'll put them all into the comments there. Thank you so much to the Corra Foundation for, again, helping us to continue on with the In-Out Crowd through 2021. And we do hope that you enjoyed everything that we had to give you this evening. And of course, this is going to be available on YouTube, that you can watch again and again and again with all the other episodes as you wish. But I'm afraid for now,